Welcome back to our channel. So in the next few minutes we shall be looking at some few tips before buying a house. So coming up, so tip number one, even before you decide going to view the house, you must know the price of the house and decide whether you can afford it or not. So if you're paying cash and you have the money, it's good, and you just go and pay the house. Of course, there are other processes that you have to go through to verify whether it's properly done or whether the documents, the paperwork is well done. But if you're taking a mortgage, of course, there are other steps you need to decide. You need to decide whether you can afford to take a mortgage depending on your salary. So there are several ratios that, those people who give mortgage, whether they are banks or is those institutions that give mortgages use. There's what we call the rule of thumb when it comes to mortgages. So it's what they say 28/36 rule. So simply it says that the lender should not take more than 28% of your gross income. So when you're taking a mortgage, for example, let's say you're earning 100,000, it's not supposed to take more than 28,000 of your income. So simply that's the front end ratio. So for the back end ratio, simply the mortgage lender, including all other debts that you may be paying. For example, you may be paying for the car loan, maybe be having a student loan and other loans that you've borrowed. So all of them should not be more than 36%. So that's what we call the back end ratio, simply the 36%. So if you're earning, for example, let's say 100,000, and your debts, your student debt, your mortgage debt, your car payment are exceeding that 6%, then you may be disqualified from being given a mortgage, or you may be forced to pay high interest rate because it's a risky situation. Simply how you calculate the back end ratio is simply by taking your annual salary and then dividing it by 12 and multiplying by 0.36 or 36%. So the figure that you're going to get there is the maximum that can be taken off your gross salary, and then by the mortgage and other debts that you're paying. So for the front end ratio is simply by taking the annual income, dividing it by 12. That is gross annual income, dividing it by 12 and then multiplying by 0.8. So that's the maximum the mortgage lender can take from your salary. So that includes the mortgage payment, the interest, and maybe there are taxes or other fees that are included within the mortgage. So that's the maximum that the mortgage lender can take from you. But I'm saying these are not cast on stone. Of course, there are things that you can negotiate with your lender depending on your credit score. So tip number 2 is simply know the value of what you're buying. So the fact that you have the money or you can afford the mortgage does not mean you go for a spending spree. It is important to know what you're acquiring. What is the value of that? So our real estate market for the last few years has not been driven by fundamentals, and it has been driven by other factors that I do not wish to discuss in this channel. But I feel for that reason, most of the houses in the market are overpriced. So it is important to know the value of what you're buying. So one of the ways you can do that, you can hire a valuer to do the valuation of the house that you're buying, to get to know at least the fair value, to get a fair value of that property. Another method you can use is you can Google and see what other properties are selling in that area. Of course, that may not be very, very effective because even the other properties could be overpriced. So another method, again, you can go to the ground, go to the local area and visit the people there and ask the last sold price, the market price of the last sold property. So those are a few ways you can get to know the value, but the best is maybe getting a value. But if you can get a value, you can use those other methods to make sure you get a fair price for whatever you're buying. So they say as an investor, you're supposed to make money when you're going in. So if you're buying a house, the worst case, you should buy it at the market price. But if you're an investor and you're a smart investor, you should always buy it at a lower price compared to the market price. So just in case if you want to sell it like tomorrow, you can always make money. So tip number 3 is location. location is very, very important when it comes to buying property. So it is important to investigate the area where the property is located. Is it secure? Does it have, drainage? The traffic, how is it in terms of when off-peak, when, peak times? How is the traffic? Are you going to spend most of your times in jams, moving, from work or going to work? So it is important to investigate some of these things. Are there basic amenities? Are there schools, are there hospitals around? Are there other things that you may need as an individual? So it's up to you to decide the things that you normally use. Are there clubs around for some of us? So the thing is to decide the amenities that you need around the property. So check whether they are available. I think it is important to check even the distance from work. How far is the home from your workplace? You don't want to spend a lot of time on the road. So there are so many other things you can check on location. It's up to you to decide, what fits you. So tip number 3, when you go to view the property, you need to see the building structure. You need to check the exteriors and the interiors of the house. So for example, for the exteriors, you could be looking at the roof and the walls and other things, that are related to exteriors. You could be looking at the garden. So all other things that involve exterior, it's very, very expensive to change some of these things if they are not properly done. Once you buy the house, it's very, very expensive, for example, to replace the roof or even replace the walls. So it is good to check, whether they are properly done. Other things you can check in the interiors, it could be, how the rooms are, how are they done. It could be checking, again, drainage, how are the bathrooms, how are the toilets. So my advice here is the best thing to do is to hire a professional to do those checks, because sometimes there are things you will not be able to see. For example, the drainage, the wiring, you may not be able to see. So an expert or a professional in this field will be able to, do a good inspection and check whether the house is properly designed, the structural. An engineer, for example, a structural engineer will be able to tell whether the house is properly done. So for you may not be in a position to do that. Of course, you may be able to, catch flaws here and there, but the main ones, the major ones, you may not be able to see them. So it is important maybe to hire an engineer to check the interiors and the exteriors of the house before you buy. This is a long-term decision, and you need to, make sure you get it right before you make any payment. So tip number 4, when you get to viewing the house, ask as many questions as possible to the person who is selling, whether it's an agent or the owner. Ask as many questions as possible, because from asking questions, you're able, to draw some information that you cannot see with your own eyes. There could be property wrangles in that, there could be challenges, other challenges. By asking questions, you could get to mine that information. So for example, if it is a gated community, it's always to ask what you're buying yourself into. Are there other charges that you'll be incurring on a monthly basis apart from what you're paying? Because some gated communities have some charges like security charges, cleaning charges, and other charges that they don't say when they're selling the house to you. So it is important to know, are there other charges that you're likely to incur after buying the house? Are you buying, the entire house? Are you sharing the compound with other people? So it is important for gated communities to ask those questions, because they are not, given outright. They are not, made clear most of the time. So it is important to ask as many questions as possible involving the property. And by doing that, you'll be able to get more information about the property that may help you in deciding whether to buy or not. The final tip is verification of paperwork or verification of, the documents. So it's good to ask for the plan of the houses, the title deeds, and other documents that you may need to have to know whether to verify the property owner, to verify whether it is in the right location, and to verify any other information that you may need, whether, rates are paid. So you need to verify whether all these documents are in place and the information in them is right. So I think in this, again, I also advise you, you may not, for example, if you're not a property agent, if you're not a property seller, that is not your business, it is important that you hire, for example, a surveyor to help you determine the location, or use a real estate agent to help you decide whether some of this information that the seller or the agent that is selling is true. Because I've seen some cases where people are losing their money, losing their hard-earned cash to cons who are pretending or acting to sell some houses that do not belong to them. So you need to have someone who knows how to verify such kind of information. Maybe you may need to go to check with county councils to check whether the rates are paid. You may need to check with the land registry to know the property owner who is registered under that property. So the information there you may need, there's a lot of information you need to verify. And if you do not have the ability to do that, you do not have the knowledge to do that, it is important to hire someone to do that work for you. So do not limit yourself to the only tips that we've discussed here, so you can check for more other tips so that they can help you in making the right decision. So another advice, you take your time when you're viewing the house. And another thing, make sure maybe when you're going to do the viewing, go with a friend, because you may be able to spot what you miss. So another thing, I advise you is to, as an investor, always keep your emotions at bay. Do not be emotional. Do not be so excited that you're buying a house, because when you're emotional, sometimes you miss some details. So it is important, keep your emotion at bay. Be very, very objective when you're viewing the house. So buying a house is a dream most of us have. It's a dream that you'd want to fulfill soon as possible, or acquiring a property. So I wish you all the best in acquiring that property or buying that house. Make sure you do it well and do it right. As I have said earlier, you're supposed to make money when you're going in. So make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into. So let's go and view those houses that I talked about. And before I go, please subscribe to our channel, hit that like button to be able to, to get more videos about business, investments, and real estate. So see you next time.